Kyle McCord is better than Will Howard. Agree or disagree? Red shirt or transfer?
Red shirt.
Yeah. I might have to redshirt that as well.
Ooh.
I think it would be interesting to see what he looked like now, especially with Chip Kelly at Ohio State, but I think what was it the coach said? Have to send Ryan Day a bottle of champagne for McCord. I think that's a bottle well spent.
Really? You guys think a guy that has a 65 completion percentage versus a guy that has a 73 in Will Howard is better? I think what a lot of people also, he's from, I didn't know Will Howard's from down in town, PA. That's right down the street, sir. Anyways.
Okay.
I think a lot of people are looking at the dumb decision that he made at the end of the Oregon game, which I really equate to that being all around coaching for, like, the dude killed it in the game. You know, I know what Kyle McCord is doing up at Syracuse is good, but I think hindsight's always 20/20 when you're obviously you're in a fresh start, got a brand new coach, things are getting handled a little different. In a smaller school, there's not really high expectations, even though you're 5-1, versus Will Howard that came from Kansas State, goes to Ohio State, and had one bad decision in that game that cost him. I don't know. I really think, really and truly, across the board, that Kyle McCord is not as good as Will Howard. So I'm gonna have to transfer on this one.
My assessment of this is not in any way an indictment on Will Howard. I mean, I really like him. I don't like. I'm not pinning that loss to Oregon on him, despite like that final play. It's just what McCord is doing is very impressive at Syracuse, no less, right? Like, he's 19 touchdowns to 6 interceptions with a Syracuse supporting cast, right? He has them at 6-1. Their only loss being who was it? Let me check. To Stanford, a 2-point loss to Stanford, which isn't a great that. It's not like it's not like a loss to Oregon, right? But you also do have that win over UNLV. So you are UNLV's only loss, right? You're rolling. You've beaten Georgia Tech already in the ACC play. Like, I like Will Howard, but I think, like, even if you were to compare what Will Howard's done this year to what Kyle McCord did last year, and you have to remember that last year was Kyle McCord's first year as a starter, right? He had Marvin Harrison Jr., yes, but I would argue that their supporting cast now in Columbus is better than what they had last year, just because it was really the Marvin Harrison Jr. show in terms of receiving the football. And outside of him, Emeka Egbuka could give you some production, right? But it was really like, if Marv is ready to go, then we are too. And if not, we're going to be a little bit on the struggle bus. And I think this year, right, Will Howard is set up better. He was multi-year starter at that point. You now have Chip Kelly at the helm, and you add in Quinshawn Judkins, another guy who can, right, take a little bit of the load off of your shoulders. And that's not discrediting Will Howard, right? But I think that, like, seeing Kyle McCord do what he's doing right now at Syracuse is very impressive. And I think I would rather have Kyle McCord at this point, but I think that's because I think highly of McCord rather than I think low of Will Howard.
That's fair.
Yeah. And I mean, that's pretty much exactly the point that I was going to bring up. We look at, like, Syracuse's weapons that he has throwing to, and it's just, they're all right. I mean, again, they're 6-1 with the only loss being to Stanford. And even then that was a 3-point loss. But then you look at, what Ohio State has, and they're, wide receiver university. They've got, running back wise, Travion Henderson, Quinshawn Judkins. We look at wide receiver. We mentioned Egbuka. You've got, obviously, Jeremiah Smith, who making these amazing acrobatic catches, which, while it's not a major throwing stone. It still does help with that accuracy completion. I know Will Howard has like the 6th best QBR in the nation right now, but I don't know. You can tell that there's a massive improvement with Kyle McCord. I would argue on a worse team than what he had last year. Same amount of time. He only had 6 interceptions last year, but he had 24 touchdowns last year, like as a whole, and he's on 19 right now in week 7 or week 8. So I think as of now, with less, he's doing more than Will Howard is.
So would you guys say that Ohio State's wide receiving core last year is better than this year, or reverse?
I would say they're better this year because of the depth.
I was gonna say I would say they're better this year.
Because really? Last year, right? You had. Yeah. I mean, look. Last year,
like Police said, when Marvin Harrison was on one, he was on one. But like against the Michigan game, when he couldn't get it going,
Julian Fleming, 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗂𝗧𝗓, Cade
Stover. I mean, Stover, yes, he's better than
Stover,
G. Smith,
yes, but outside of that,
Julian Fleming has hardly done anything in his career. It's 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝘂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, right? I mean, he's really the only constant, right? And I would still say that Marvin Harrison Jr. clears anyone in either room last year or this year, right? I don't think there's much arguing that, but adding in Jeremiah Smith, who is already playing, like outproducing 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝘂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 this year, and having former 5-stars in Brandon Inniss and Carnell Tate going from year 1 to year 2, and that improvement, I would say holistically they are better, even though, right, the Marvin Harrison Jr. from last year is better than any receiver they have on their roster right now. And then I also think you do have to take into account the fact that you also now have passing options, not only in TreVeyon Henderson, but also Quinshawn Judkins, right? Because those are both guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield. They're going to get involved in the passing game. So I would say, like, head to toe, yeah, I think that this year's group is slightly better, but obviously they don't have the prize gem, right? That wide receiver 1 in Marvin Harrison Jr. Jeremiah Smith, incredible, right? Great, especially as a true freshman, but he's not the spot right now where Marvin Harrison Jr. was last year. That would be a little bold.
So what about Cade Stover versus G. Scott?
Yeah, Cade Stover's better. I don't even think that's remotely close either. Cade Stover was an anchor of that offense for multiple years. He was very reliable, but again, I think all things considered, right? They gained experience, having 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝘂𝗀𝗀🐂 back for a 4th year, right? Having Carnell Tate and Brandon Inniss, yeah, right, going into year 2. So they have more experience. They're able to fill out their frames a little bit more, get stronger and faster. And then Jeremiah Smith, is just a completely new addition. Yeah, I do think that head to toe, right, that this is a better unit, even though they don't have a stud at the level of Marvin Harrison Jr.
That's fair.